Without you, it would be impossible to organize it. And I already said a welcome, but I think no one else can give us a better welcome than Paul van Hoof from the municipality of Arnhem. He's project manager of the energy program of the municipality. Paul?
Yeah, thank you. On behalf of the City Council, I welcome you in Arnhem. And I welcome you in Papendal. There's a lot of energy in Papendal, so you have noticed. It's one of our prouds in Arnhem. A lot of sports on international grounds is over here. But there is more to see and to learn in Arnhem, so I'd like to introduce you something, and I will go to the role from the local government in the energy transition. When you see Arnhem is a city, if you not notice, is that it's creative and it's green. For setting, this is something to give you something of the context. And a lot of, I think, you know Arnhem from A Bridge Too Far, who made a lot of scars in Arnhem, but made us also creative. But the topic we are here is about energy efficiency. And Arnhem is over about more than 100 years an electric city. Not because we say it is, but because of the people, the companies, the industry are over here for almost 100 years. We got the KEMA, we got DNV, TenneT, Eliander, we got a University of Applied Science. They are here for decades, and they made Arnhem an electric city. The old school electricity, but also the new sustainable electricity. A good example for it is also our trolley. We are one of the few cities in Europe who has a trolley. So that's a zero emission public transportation. I looked at the program today, and I saw that it's about which role everybody is playing in the topic of energy transition. And I thought I can tell a lot of things about what our stakeholders doing in the city. But more interesting is what we as City Council are doing at this topic. And I think a local government doesn't make jobs. They are not the investments in innovations. But we are a party in the city that connects people. So we think it's also our responsibility to connect people. It's not something that happens automatically. We think we have an active role in that. We want to do matchmaking between those people. We want to provide a podium. We want to facilitate, and we want to interact. And therefore we have for a few years now a program. It's called Energy Made in Arnhem. And we tried to join a lot of partners in the city to achieve mutual gains. And this is about 100 partners, and we have over 150 projects running in the city, from small initiatives at civil society, at the big things DNV works out in the park over here in Arnhem. We are very proud of that, and we think that's the main thing a local government should do. To give you an example from early on, in Holland, and I think my next speaker will tell you more about it, is an instrument that we call it the Green Deal. And the Green Deal is something we make an appointment with parties in Holland, like the ministry, also a lot of industry, other cities, to join each other in a mutual gain. In this time we call it the Smart Energy Cities. And the Smart Energy Cities has a goal to achieve 100,000 smart energy buildings in 5-6 years. Because we see there has been a lot of experimenting in the last years, a lot of pilots, but we also see that there needs to be a next step. We need a next step from pilots to upscaling. And we try, together with some other cities and the ministerium and the people and the parties in Arnhem, to achieve and to contribute to that. So what did we do, actually? We brought together location and knowledge. In Arnhem, there are people, parties who have knowledge from universities, from research development, or industry parties. And we mixed them, we brought them together to get an upscaling. From now, we are started, Yvonne, I think half a year with this program, and we got 20 locations. It doesn't sound much, maybe, but we are a city with about 150,000 inhabitants, so we are not a very big city in Holland, and we think in a half year achieving 20 locations is quite a good effort for us. So what would we do to connect? We have the 100 parties and the 150 projects, and we want to keep the flow going. So we organize network meetings. I think we heard is that keep also the promotion on a high level. The university over here says, if Arnhem says on a lot of stages that we are the electric city, they can have advantages of it to get more subsidy, more investments, more students. So that's one of the roles we want to do. And last but not least, we also need good examples. We have to make sure that we also are a launching customer. We also are someone who gives the good examples. So this is our motto. We want to facilitate matchmaking of stakeholders and aims to improve the investment climate, simplify regulations and procedures, and last but not least, lead by example by increasing the sustainability of its own buildings and operations. Thank you for your attention.
Well, Paul, thank you very much. It was nice to have an introduction of the place that we will spend the coming few days on, both history and also an introduction to the future. And it was very interesting to see what role the municipality takes and can take in this respect. The next speaker is Rob Bourret, Director of Director National Programs of the Dutch Enterprise Agency. And, well, I did a bit of rehearsal because they recently changed their name. And he will also give his point of view on the Green Deal that was already mentioned by Paul, and also give the broader perspective of the role of the national government related to energy efficiency. Okay.
Also on my part, welcome here in Papendal. You already said, if you noticed when you came in a couple of days, we have the World Soccer in Brazil. They were trained here. And these are our best training facilities. So, and I wondered if we could train our consultants or whatever on industrial efficiency also here, so that we could have higher rates of industrial efficiency in the Netherlands and anywhere. But that's a different kind of expertise, field, work, and I will tell you about that. And what you will notice in my presentation, that it's about the polder. You know, a great deal of the Netherlands is below sea level, polders. Don't worry, where you are here is on sand grounds, so you are above sea level. So in the case climate change will happen now, you are dry and high here. But it's about the polder, because polder is our asset, but polder is also a key word in how we in the Netherlands deal with societal issues with difficult issues by many deals among us, not only subsidies or whatever, but green deals, top sector approaches. We speak a lot with each other. That takes time, but in the end, you have a very solid ground for dealing with difficult issues like industrial energy efficiency. What I will talk about is about the Netherlands Enterprise Agency. As Yvonne said, that's our new name, but we are an old acquaintance. We are now a merger of several government bodies, but what has still be staying is what we are working for. We are working for cleaner energy sources, innovative entrepreneurship, international entrepreneurship, and agriculture entrepreneurship. And the term entrepreneurship is very important, and that's also one of the elements where you are here, because energy efficiency alone is not working. You have to put it in context, and first of all, you have to put it in context of a broader policy, because the energy efficiency policy in the Netherlands is embedded and based on the energy report of 2011 and the top sector approach, and that is dealing with sustainable energy. That's dealing with major financial instruments like what we call the subsidy stimulate, this SDE plus, but it's also focused on getting biomass in co-firing, innovation and long-term agreements and green deals to get the opportunities that energy efficiency and renewable energy offer. Because you could say energy efficiency, make some legislation and that's it, but that doesn't work. Because you want the industry to not only to cooperate and to comply to standards of energy efficiency, but they must get a driver to do it. And that is, in our view, making money with energy on several levels. In the Netherlands, we have some competitive advantages, for example, cooling water, infrastructure, and harbors, but also offshore industry, a very booming nowadays, bio-based economy, and oil and gas. And because that's the way we are looking at this problem and the role of energy efficiency in this context, we thought we call it in the Netherlands top sector approach. I haven't a better word for that, but in essence that is strengthening the golden triangle, the triangle of government, science and education, and companies. It may look like obvious that you cooperate with, in this triangle, with those partners, but we come from a period where many people looked up to the government and said, well, government, say what we must do, and we do it, or finance us, or subsidize us, or whatever. And the Dutch government, a couple of years ago, said, no, that's not our role anymore, because the government is not investing. The industry is investing. The government is not the university. University is the place where innovation is born, and that is what you have to stimulate. And that's why we call it now the triangle, and the government is not more doing than staffing, simplify legislation and creating fiscal stimuli. And that's what they do. You could say, well, interesting, you could say from the industry approach, why bother as an industry? But I'm telling, I think not much new if nowadays that it's for industry and for the economy, it pays to run a sustainable business. That's what's going on. Being green sells, and it's a license to operate. For many companies, sustainable business is a license to operate for the coming years. Because if you are not doing your business on a sustainable basis, you're out of business within a couple of years because consumers don't want you anymore. But we have experience with what you could say the top sector approach, Green Deals and whatever, because in the Netherlands, and that's typically Dutch, typically polder, since the 90s we have long-term agreements with industry. We have developed them, we implement them, and they are, in essence, voluntary, but if you don't go along with the voluntary agreement, you can't have your refund from the green tax. So there is it's voluntary, but more or less also somewhat compulsory. And we are now in the third phase of the long-term agreements from the period 2001-2020, with the goals as stated here: 30% energy efficiency improvement in the period of 2005 to 2020. Based on roadmaps per sector that they have to make them themselves. We are not making roadmaps for the industry. The industry is making roadmaps themselves. The only thing we do is, a quality check, more or less. Well, it's rather simple what I'm saying now, but it's more than that. But that is what we are doing. And we have, since 2 or 3 years, a like covenant agreement with the industry that is falling under the emission trading scheme, so the bigger companies in the Netherlands. And in fact, what we are doing is plan, do, check, act. That's what we're doing. On the best side, you can see what it is, and it's too lengthy to go into that. But our role as an implementing body of the government is to help industry planning, help industry doing it, help industry checking it, and maybe evaluate and change. But they have to do it themselves. And the interesting thing is that we made the long-term agreements from start, energy efficiency within the factory, within the fence, but there has been an extra element, and that is what we called chain efficiency, energy efficiency in the chain, the production chain or chains that are next to each other, because our analysis showed that in the chain, a lot could be gained on energy efficiency. And that was now not gained because the chain was not cooperating. Mostly they are a supplier or a consumer from each other, or competitors. That's also possible. But that means that if you have to refinery, for example, in Rijnmond, and next to it is a big company wanting it, but they are more or less in the same business. Up to now, they didn't want to speak and didn't want to make a pipeline over the fence. But those are very simple examples, but they weren't realized. That's an example of chain efficiency that is now materializing and has effect. I will come up to what it means in figures, what it means, and these are a couple of examples of what we have achieved. And I'm saying we, the industry, has achieved. We as a government only help, only support, finance, knowledge, etc. But it's the industry that has to do it. That's why this presentation is called that way. And they do it because they see the advantages of it. It's cost, it's reduction of energy costs, of course. It appeals to a green image, more than that. And that means that what we now have to achieve is in the long-term agreements, and I'm showing you here in the left the achievements in the period 2001-2007, and that meant a 2% energy efficiency per annum. The normal efficiency, if you're doing nothing, is mostly 1%, 2%. So the long-term agreements achieved an extra on the normal annual energy efficiency within industry. But it's an average. And on top, this is a somewhat other period, but that doesn't matter. 2009, 2012, you see ICT, industry, nearly 40% in total for that period. At the bottom, Dutch oil gas producing industries, not even 2%. So although the average is interesting, there's a lot to be gained if you look at separate sectors. So when the government saw these figures, they thought, well, we have to do something extra. This one. So there was last year made an extra energy agreement for sustainable growth, including energy efficiency. And interesting enough, in that agreement, industrial efficiency was top of the bill, top of the list of to be achieved. All parties, these are industry parties, NGOs, governments who have signed it, said, well, okay, you get a last chance now to achieve it. But if you won't achieve it within a couple of years, the legislation will come. We will bring it in and get standards. And we hope that this will work alongside the Green Deals. And what we achieved now is, and these are the figures, that the long-term agreements and the MEE agreement is dealing with the emission trade scheme industries, 7 participating sectors. A process efficiency of 3.7% and a chain efficiency of 1.9%. That's quite substantial. It could be more, but you can see there that the approach has effect. It helps. For the smaller companies, also in that period, the achievement was higher. That's quite interesting, 7.6%. And what we hope, and of course the crisis didn't help, it didn't help the big companies. They reduced investment on energy efficiency as they did on all kinds of other topics. But we have seen, but I can't show you the figures because they are still confidential, that if we look at the first indications of the analysis 2013, they are more positive. And I hope, I sincerely hope, that in the definitive results, indeed, industry will show that they have better figures on energy efficiency. Because, as I said, energy has to do it. The government can't do it, and the industry is in the position to do it. It's hopeful, but we are not yet cheering. Thank you very much.
I'm a bit confused because I thought it was a different order. It's your, yeah, okay, I thought it, okay. Well, Rob, thank you very much for your presentation and the role of the Dutch government, or actually the role of the Dutch government supporting the industry. The next speaker is Robert Tromop, head of unit of the energy efficiency, head of energy efficiency unit at IEA. And he will explain us the importance of multiple benefits. And actually, I'm quite thrilled to hear the results because from one of your colleagues, I heard a presentation on the intermediate results, and I'm very thrilled to hear what your findings are. Please, the floor.
Thank you, and thank you, Nils and ECEEE, for inviting us here. I was so relieved to hear that the coffee industry is 10% more efficient than it was a few years ago. This is so important. 10% more coffee per unit of energy. You can drink that, you know, it's solid stuff. Okay, multiple benefits of energy efficiency. Okay. I want to take a step back a little bit to 2 years ago and some of the thinking that drove our work on this at the energy efficiency at the IEA. We started thinking increasingly decision makers were not engaged in megajoules and kilowatt hours, but wanted to know more about the monetized economic outcomes from energy efficiency. And that's come true because we're seeing a lot more pressure on that. And at that time, if you look around, there's some very interesting papers going back in the 90s when people were thinking a little bit about the meaning of energy efficiency and energy efficiency indicators. And a very good paper by a guy called Murray Patterson explored what do we mean by energy efficiency, and it challenged the notion of traditional megajoules per tonne physical output indicators for energy efficiency on the basis that we use energy for services. And it got us thinking a little bit about, well, let's start thinking more about the different types of services we want from energy efficiency. And we want warm homes, cold beer, we want mobility, we want productivity, we need to in our way. And it started getting us thinking quite differently about energy efficiency. The term co-benefits emerged for a while, and that was very useful, but we thought there's a bit more going on than just co-benefits. If you look at service outcome as one of the improvements of energy efficiency, you start to look beyond things that are directly associated with a reduction in energy. You're looking for service improvements. And so this notion, multiple benefits, emerged. And it's got a bit of its own momentum, which is interesting because we haven't even finished the work. We're close to finishing it, but it's already got some momentum. So I have a few questions to start this session off. One is, how far have kilowatt hours got us? For many years we were focused on reducing kilowatt hours, reducing megajoules. How far has this really got us? And I'll show you a little answer later on. Price is an absolutely critical driver of energy efficiency. And I think it's lost quite often. When we do our market report, which we started doing last year, we started seeing there are two big drivers of energy efficiency. The first one is the price of energy. The second one is policies that enable and stimulate improvements by the private sector. But we forget about price, and it's very hard to untangle price as a driver of the progress that has been made. How do markets deliver energy efficiency? How are these markets evolving and developing? What does society really get out of energy efficiency? What do we really get out of it? Society makes an investment, what does it really get out of it? And then the biggest question, well, what is changing? What has changed? And what's it worth to us? So there's some quite big questions that we hope to advance our understanding of energy efficiency with a multiple benefits approach. So I want to go back to how far have kilowatt hours got us. Last year we analysed the global energy efficiency market, and we worked out it was worth something like $300 billion in 2011, which is the latest set of data. Energy efficiency was big enough to stand alongside traditional supply resources. The investment in energy efficiency and energy efficiency services and products was as big as coal, oil and gas, electricity investments in infrastructure, as big as renewable electricity generation investments on an annual basis, not quite as big as upstream oil and gas investments, they're the biggie in the industry, but bigger than the subsidies for renewable energy, and not quite as big as the fossil fuel subsidies around the world. So energy efficiency isn't just some second bit player, it's right up there amongst some of the big supply side investment options, and as a market it stands out. We looked back to the first data we had back in 1974 and started asking, well, what has been the net impact of energy efficiency over this time? And you're looking very simply at the improvement in energy productivity, energy intensity on a global basis. And you can see there is quite a big built-up improvement. None of us have the fridges that we had 25 years ago. Fridges are probably 10 years old on average. So we can look back and sort of say, well, what's changed in energy intensity over this time period? And we actually find that energy efficiency now on that basis is making a bigger contribution to IEA member countries than any of the other supply side options. Okay, you may say this is a very interesting analysis. You're looking at a long time period, looking at change, but hang on a minute, what's the average age of oil and gas infrastructure? 30 years. There are some 50-year-old upstream oil components out there. That's actually older than some of the energy efficiency components. So it's not a bad analysis if you want to get your head around energy efficiency. We've actually come quite a long way. It makes a massive contribution to society already. And we've come a long way with a focus largely on kilowatt hour savings. And it's an interesting notion when we use energy to deliver services. So we'll keep on moving. Multiple benefits of energy efficiency. 2 years ago, we identified 15 different types of outcome improvement that energy efficiency gives you. We're used to energy savings and the related greenhouse gas savings. And a lot of policies around the world are driven on this basis. Policies to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, to save energy. But there's 13 other types of quite different outcome that's available. Job creation, macroeconomic outputs, improvements in disposable income, consumer surplus, poverty alleviation. The countries that are prepared to dig into what are our lowest strata of society, how are they getting on, are they struggling with power bills, actually find there's a really interesting social challenge there. Health and well-being, and a few others as well. So I won't mention them all, but we, working with our country delegates, picked on 5 of them because we thought they're the most substantial and the ones we want to know about the most. There's a further piece of work to explore some of these other ones because right now we don't know how big they are. So we picked up on macroeconomic impacts of energy efficiency, the impact on public budgets. Government is very intimately concerned with energy efficiency policies and investments. And one of the biggest drivers for governments is the impact these have on public budgets. Industrial productivity is an important one. The benefits that accrue to utilities, energy providers is important, as is health and well-being for households. So there's a sampling across different parts of society, and we started an exploration into what sort of benefits are there. They also occur at the level of individuals, sectoral levels, and international levels. And you can sort of see that they interest different stakeholders, international, national, sectoral, and individual multiple benefits. Impact on just about everyone, the public as a whole, whereas national and sectoral benefits probably influence more government decision makers. So there's different constituency sets around multiple benefits. As our project goals, we wanted to understand outcomes, not just outputs, but outcomes. So what does it do for households and industry and society? We wanted to identify some of the tools and methods that were used. We wanted to show how a multiple benefits analysis can fit in with existing evaluation approaches already used by governments around the world. We wanted to communicate the contribution that energy efficiency made in a sense that would engage ministers of social welfare, ministers for the economy, not just ministers of energy. And we wanted to help develop some consensus across countries and across governments around the value of energy efficiency from a multiple benefits perspective. The main output of this work is a handbook, which is, I've been reading the final draft the last few days. It's gone out to our delegates for review. 2 big sections, one on methodological, it's a toolkit as it were. It says what methodologies have been used in different multiple benefits, how do they work, what sort of evidence do we get, what are some of the key indicators we find. And the second part is how do you apply multiple benefits in existing analytical frameworks for energy efficiency policies. We had over 300 experts from around the world participating in this, 4 large workshops, and we had funding from a number of resources to drive this project. So a 2-year project, and it's all coming to a head now, and I think we're feeling pretty good about it, really. So the book will come out in September. We ran a roundtable workshop on industrial productivity and competitiveness, and I think a few people in the audience were at that workshop. Really trying to understand, for some of the different stakeholders, what were some of the key non-energy efficiency benefits that motivated them, that got their attention, and that would motivate them to take this seriously and invest in it. So, and you can see there are quite a range of different outcomes that we think different stakeholders would have been interested in. But some of these really go to the core of business decision making, what drives a business in the decisions it makes, what drives the boardroom. Really looking at what programs and what policies really do drive change in industry. Looking at how you can motivate the financial investments in businesses to better invest in energy efficiency. How do we improve the benefit cost ratios for investments in energy efficiency and things like that. So quite a broad range of issues on the table at a workshop like this. Some of the headlines, I can't give too much away because we've got to sell this book too, so it's going to come out in September, but I want to give you some headlines, some insights into the sort of things that we're finding without giving too much away, and hopefully this is a little bit of a teaser. But look, generally, there's 40 to 50% greater value over on top the energy savings from productivity gains. That's pretty much across the board. So, you know, you can throw another 50% value into this, but we're finding as much as 250% value from energy efficiency. So, in a lot of cases, the value of the saved energy is way less than the value of the productivity gains. Now, some of you are in the space where you do this sort of stuff as a business, so you'll know that. One of the things seems to be that energy efficiency projects improve control of processes, improved understanding of what's going on in the business, which leads to improved productivity, product quality, safety. Important factor is maintaining legislative compliance, reduces risk, improves process time, reduces waste. So there's a whole bunch of things that happen as a result of energy efficiency initiatives. We found it quite interesting that a lot of the language in the space is still around simple payback. There's no quicker way to undervalue something by saying, well, you're going to pay it off in 2 years' time, when it's a 15-year investment and 15 years of outcome benefits. So we need to change our language a little bit as one of the lessons that we've learned from this. When the operational outcomes are worth something like 2.5 times the value of the energy savings, that sounds fantastic. But I would like to bet serious money that we've only just started to learn about this. We have got some representative points that tell us there's something really good going on there. once we get the hang of this and learn a little bit more, we will find even greater returns in productivity than this. Examples where 3 to 4 year paybacks, when no one in industry wants to fund that, right? Drop back to 1 year once you start to incorporate the productivity gains and the other gains to a business. And so it's quite transformative around the investment decisions a business will make. Here's a little example. A firm in the US saving 153 megawatt hours, but $50,000 per year in process chemical reduction through an improvement in the process. Another 12,000 in corrosion inhibitors, another 20,000 per year in corrosion damage. So all of a sudden these other outcomes are worth more, and frankly, they're things you don't want. You don't want to be messing around with corrosion inhibitors, they're nasty chemicals. You want to reduce your process chemical input. I'd say the environmental outcomes here are worth their weight in gold. For many businesses, energy is an operational cost. We're starting to identify strategic value to a business, not just operational cost savings. That has to be an important driver for energy efficiency in the future. Multiple benefits leads to an improved evaluation of energy and energy efficiency investments, and you drive better strategic decisions in a business. At one level, this could change how a business sees itself and where it could be going. So there's a strategic value here, let alone some of the things you can monetize. And it's really hard to, I think, monetize the value of better information to a business, but it does sit in this. We found in all cases, across all the sectors we looked at, there already are evaluation tools that can be used. They often come from different disciplines, from the health services, the public health, epidemiology discipline, for instance, has a huge amount of stuff around understanding health implications in social settings. So there's many other disciplines have tools that we could use and we should use. We have ways of monetizing your energy efficiency. There are a number of ways we can do this. Even if you can't get direct market value on this, there are other ways of coming up with good estimates that, stop treating energy efficiency outcomes as trivial and start treating them as something that's real and monetizable. And that's important. At one level, there are some very subjective ones. At another level, there are some very hard objective ones. But understanding the full range that's there and some of the techniques we can use does help us advance this. Okay, so we also know that we can engage multiple benefits outcomes in traditional energy efficiency and energy policy evaluation techniques. And one of the things we do is show how this can actually be used. At one level, once you've monetized some of these things, they're quite transferable and they're quite easily put in either as costs as benefits in a system. Here's an interesting thing. We may be missing a lot of energy efficiency because we're not actually accounting for the energy efficiency improvements when we undertake an operational or productivity improvement. It's purely seen as a productivity gain rather than something that has further implications for the energy system. So, okay, data challenges perhaps, but we're missing the corollary of energy efficiency often by not looking for the energy efficiency in normal production changes, changes of worn out plant and things like that. So we need to reframe how we look at this, I think. So what's changed? Well, we need to engage some new paradigms. And I'm talking we, everyone, not just the people in the audience here. If you look at the sort of discussion going on around the European Union's discussions on energy efficiency targets for the future, the discussion going on between the European Union and different players, they're starting to talk about social and economic outcomes. It's not just about reducing primary energy consumption. We need to address the other things as well. So some new paradigms need to be developed here. Multidisciplinary evaluation is key. We need to stop looking at this as technologists and start thinking of social scientists, economists, whatever. There's a broader range of views here that help us advance. We already have some good evaluation and evaluation techniques. I suspect often we're just not simply funded to use them. My own experience in policy development, fantastic policy idea, you budget for the evaluation, the first thing that gets cut is, well, you don't need to spend all this money on evaluation. You've all heard that before, but until we get better resources, we're going to struggle to do this well, I think. And most of our life cycle analysis frameworks can be expanded and should be. It's quite legitimate to go beyond the quite essential analysis. The big thing we all need to do is start asking a different question. We need to start asking what's changed or what's changing rather than how many kilowatt hours have we saved. This notion of saving kilowatt hours is a bit of a euphemism. It doesn't really help us, I think, go forward. If we ask what's changed, and particularly if we're prepared to ask about what were the bad outcomes, did we have some whoopses? Did we have some things that didn't work out the way we wanted? There are some things we really don't want to tell the minister about. If we understand those, we'll start to understand how to develop better policies, better programs for energy efficiency that capture even greater levels of social outcome and economic outcome. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much for this presentation. It was really interesting to hear that actually energy efficiency is one of the topics you can look at, but by far not the most relevant maybe for industry. The next presenter is Eberhard Jochem, Senior Executive of Fraunhofer EC and also Professor for Economics and Energy Economics at ETH in Zurich. And I think you agree that, well, we should not focus or limit just to industry and energy efficiency, but look at a broader context, which you will explain in your innovation systems approach in your presentation. And you also, I think, bring nicely together the role of governments at different levels in achieving energy efficiency improvements. May I ask you to come to the floor?
Thank you very much. I'm very glad that I can talk to the community. You know, we would say, you know, they are already Catholics, which makes it very, very easy. And specifically, it makes it even more easy because I had 3 speakers. They introduced my talk quite well. You know, Paul van Hoff, he mentioned and he stressed the importance that policy has to be made on a city level, on a small city level. And they created within half a year 150 projects. Can you ever imagine that the national government creates 150 projects in half a year? So I really like this first. And second, the same. Rob Burry said, industry has to deliver energy efficiency. And that's the case. Not politicians and not science, industry. And finally, I liked Robert Tromop's language. There are 2 things we learned. The first, he reminded us that we are not looking for energy consumption, we are looking for energy services. And which means that the useful energy is at stake. Do we really need so much useful energy as we have today? It depends on technologies. And these are today's technologies, or we heard 50 years old technologies. And the second point he made is we do have, not like the other energies, in energy efficiency, we do have lots of external benefits which are not really estimated by industry, by politicians, by the voters. And I think these 3 introductory keynotes are really very good. And I tried to add a little bit to this. And I give a short overview. You know about the potential, so I'm very quick on this. You know about the obstacles, so I'm also very quick on this. And then I try to go to the question of, you know, how those energy efficiency policies should look like so that we really get this doubling of energy efficiency in Europe. Now, Germany had during the last 12 years in industry an energy efficiency improvement by the order of 0.5% per year. 0.5% per year. That's not very much. Now we're talking about 2% per year. So it would be fourfold. That's a task. And then, of course, finally, I make some conclusions after I have outlined the strategy for energy efficiency. The theoretical potentials have been analyzed by some ETH researchers about more than 10 years ago, and the conclusion was that we can, with today's technologies available in industry or available in research, we could reduce energy demand, primary energy demand, by a factor of 5 within 70 years. And that's what the report says. It's a report from the year 2004. Now, there are reservations whether we can really make it. But the first, people say there is a thermodynamic limitation. We make steel already close to thermodynamic limits. Question, is that true? It's not true, because a lot of waste heat, and nobody uses the waste heat. We heard about the refineries. They are now trying to make a disregard of it. And the economists say there is an unavoidable staircase effect. There will be efficiency, but then after 30, 50 years, there will be no additional efficiency because there is a limit of efficiency. I refer to the fourth point. And finally, they're talking about rebound effect. Yes, there's a rebound effect in private homes, private households. And maybe the rebound effect is very much caused by higher income and not so much by less energy cost. So I do not believe those three things very much, but I think it's good to know what the arguments are, whether we can improve energy use by a factor of 5 within the next 70 years. I can deliver some of the experience regarding social benefit. Now you see here the potential of the German industry. It could save, if they really want to, something like 500 petajoule, which would be 2.2% per year, if there was really a will to do it. And what would it mean? It would mean we had to reduce energy cost of 11 billion euros, which is minus 12% of the industrial and service energy cost bill in per year. And then you see the reduction of CO2 emissions would be in the order of 5% of total greenhouse gas emissions in Germany, and additional 45,000 new jobs, because we substitute energy use by employment, by investment. The additional growth to GDP is quite small, but it's positive. It's not negative, like in most cases of renewables. And finally, we may have some additional investment which is available then for industry to go for further investments instead of paying for energy bills. The question is, can those potentials be realized? Now you know all the different obstacles. I don't go into this in detail. Lack of knowledge, high transaction cost. The question is, how can we reduce transaction cost? There will be one answer. Energy efficiency networks. Exchange of experience among energy managers. Lack of capital. We will have a specific session on this. Technology producers, and often the wholesale, they pursue their own interests, which means they do not listen to their customers. We observed during the last 5 years that in many cases, very innovative energy consuming industries, they wanted a certain innovation. And the manufacturers of the machines or of the plants refused to do the innovation. That was new for us. And finally, we heard already, 80% of the companies decide on energy efficiency investment only by payback periods, which is a risk indicator. Nothing to do with profitability. Nothing. Now, here how things have been made in the past. There's an obstacle and there's a policy, and politicians and the administration, they look what they figure out could be an obstacle or is an obstacle, and they go just for this one policy measure. That doesn't make sense. We'll see this later. Here, just to give you an idea what the stupidness is of just looking for payback periods. You see 2 to 3 years payback period, and you see the lifetime of an investment, like in compressor or a large plant, which may be 10 to 20 years lifespan. And if I say I only want to have 2 years payback or 3 years payback, what the result is that I refuse an investment with an internal rate of return of something like 30% or even 50. I refuse an investment which is highly profitable. 80% of companies in Europe are doing the wrong thing. It's incredible. Now, let's have a look at those things which we found out during the last 10 years. They are neglected. They are unused positive factors which would help those who do the investment. It would help that they could do it. And they're in the order of psychosociological areas: acknowledgement, awards, positive stimulation, motivation. These are aspects which haven't been looked at sufficiently in the past. So we really recommend all these things, and there's one help from the customers we heard already. The final users. The final users, they want more green products. And this means, if we look into the industries, the the final products using or selling industries, they get the pressure from their customers, from their green buying customers. And this is one social aspect, which then goes to marketing the products as being green. And that means you have to do something about efficiency. Now, I said that the traditional policy only looks at one obstacle, and then it has the answer. So we go for this information campaign, we go for this flyer, we go for this incentive, this kind of policy. If you look at it from the innovation research aspect, we see that it is not just the investor. There's a consultant engineer. There's the bank. There is the manufacturer delivers it. So there are many players within this game. There may be the wholesaler for mass products. And this means if we go for a certain group, for a certain technology, for a certain branch, then we have to know what is this innovation system and what are the obstacles in this system and what are the favoring factors in the system. And then we have to go for a policy bundle that we address simultaneously these obstacles or positive factors so that we really can gain a lot of efficiency. Simply because we just didn't do one thing as the traditional policy, but we did it holistically and we did it as it has to be done. So that makes the difference. Here is the chart, you may have it then later. You see simply the cycle, it goes from research and development to the manufacturers. It may go to the OEMs or the wholesaler, and then it goes to the investment, the buying, and then the use. And we have to look all these simultaneously, otherwise it's very likely that we really don't get the energy efficiency we want to have. You see two examples. One is the technical forum, as an example which we experienced during the last couple of years, and you also see the efficiency networks which have been invented in Switzerland about 30 years ago. 30 years ago they realized they can double energy efficiency progress by forming these energy efficiency networks, and there will be one presentation on this during this conference. Now, this is the product cycle where we have to look at. But we also have to look at, what role has Brussels in this business, what role has a national government, and what role has a city government or regional government. And we had this example, which I really liked very, very much, because this example of Arnhem is just exciting for what I'm going to tell you. If there are mass products like electrical motors, ventilators, compressors, of course, it makes sense that Brussels says that you should have your technical standards so that everybody knows a high efficiency motor or a high efficiency ventilator system looks like this and has A++, or it's an A or a B or whatever. So that everybody has a very simple and quick decision on what it is necessary. And there may be something like energy taxes. Maybe the energy taxes should be universal in the EU at the moment at the national level, which then gives a lot of disputes within the German industry regarding the eco tax or regarding other subsidies or the different surcharges for renewables. So there is a role for Brussels, there is a role for national governments, but there is also a role for local governments. And I think this hasn't been really focused on. What is the situation and the different levels of policy making? Because if you look into hundreds of thousands of companies in Europe, they don't listen to Brussels. And they even don't listen to the capital, to the national government. But they would listen to the mayor, or they would listen to the president of the Chamber of Commerce, because they trust their president of Chamber of Commerce. It's a question of trust, because a company owner, a manager, he can't know all the things he should know regarding energy efficiency. But if he has a trusty person, then he can, and the president says, this is very good for you. It helps you to maximize your profits. Then he thinks, yeah, he must be right. So what do I have to do? So this is the major point. I made this here, just the one example regarding confidence and regarding exchange of experiences. Now, the Swiss model. 10 to 15 companies in a region, and maybe that's good for telling it here to the Netherlands, with this ambitious goal for 2% per year. They meet 4 times a year. They get an initial consulting. They, on the basis of the initial consulting, they have a joint target, which is publicly available. Of course, the individual target of the company is confidential. But this public joint target is an important socio-psychological system which helps to go after it. Now the results, you see that's a kind of average. They are the average of 360 companies. It's the savings, the profits. It's quite comfortable for an industry and for a company. And finally, you can see that Switzerland is in the lead. Switzerland is 1/10 of Germany. So Germany could have, if they would adopt the Swiss system fully, they could have 850 networks with something like 20,000 companies working in those networks. 2.2% annual efficiency increase. Now here are a couple of examples. What can be done at the city level? Now we just started a project which is called DACH, which stands for Germany, Austria and Switzerland, because there are 3 cities, they're trying to intensify, like Arnhem, to intensify the energy efficiency activities within that cities. This is Karlsruhe, this is Winterthur in Switzerland, and Salzburg in Austria. And so you see what are the possibilities. The cities and region governments, they can give good examples. They can support energy efficiency activities, we heard already. Now they have to enlighten, they have to connect the different actors of a city. The chambers of commerce, the chambers of crafts, they can increase their activities regarding training, professional training, or they can look into their curricula of the apprentices. So there are many things they could look at. Maybe the young apprentices, they could learn what is the internal rate of return, because their boss never know about it. And they have computers, and they could just use the tools. The tools are as easy to calculate the internal rate of return as it is for the payback period of the elderly people. So the municipalities and utilities, they could intensify their services, contracting, financing, consulting. So there are many, many things on a local level which could be done. Now let me conclude. Forget about the traditional energy efficiency policies. You get free riders as much as you want, but you do not get any progress. The adequate energy efficiency policy has a lot of things, and I tried to recover what I said. First, look at the end-use delivering branches, because they tend to be the first movers, because they have the pressure from the customers, from the private households. Secondly, consider the value chain of where you want to implement energy efficiency. Otherwise, you may fail. And finally, look at the question, at what level do I talk about if I go for a certain energy efficiency activity? We have to be very clear about this concept, otherwise we are running risk that we do not get the efficiency we would like to have. Now, the one point I was making then is the policy strategies are the multi-level governance task. And you see, on the one hand, the role for Brussels or the national governments, or on the other hand, the role for cities and for regions, for provinces. And I think it seems to be important, and I'm very glad to have the example of Arnhem. I'm very glad that we make the point that we have to sell social benefits of energy efficiency. This has largely underestimated, if at all, addressed. So I think there are a lot of things where we can go along, and thank you very much for listening.
Well, thank you very much for your presentation. What I usually do if I hear a presentation, I try at least to remember one lesson from the presentation. But what I can conclude from these 4 presentations is actually that I only can draw combined lessons. And I think the first thing that we learned today is that we need integral approaches, policy bundles, various levels of governments to be involved, the value chain should be included, also addressed in the long-term agreement approach. We need to look at social benefits and multiple benefits. So without an integral approach, we will not get very far. The second lesson that I draw is that we need to speak the right language, and that sometimes it's related to the right level who speaks to the industry or the end user, like the Chamber of Commerce that has been referred to. But it also relates to, well, talk about profitability instead of risk avoidance. And we should speak not longer about energy efficiency as a topic on its own, but more about energy services and other benefits. The third lesson is that has been actually addressed in most of the presentation, is that we need energy efficiency networks. Arnhem does it at a very local scale, having, I thought it was 100 companies and end users being involved in initiatives to work jointly to a more sustainable city. Actually, the long-term agreement also is well organized around energy efficiency networks, and also in the last presentation it was addressed that we really really can see this as a great way to move forward and reduce some of the barriers. And well, the fourth lesson that I draw is about that we should also look at different sciences, not just technical sciences, but also social sciences. And I think Robert mentioned by you, we can also learn from example from health to use those indicators to have different ways of calculations, the benefits of measures that we take in the context of energy efficiency. So for me, it were very interesting presentations, and I hope, well, they were for you as well. And I can imagine that you have still some questions or you have some statements you would like to make. Therefore, I would like to invite all 4 presenters to come back on the stage. And I would like to open the floor for questions and the discussion. A lot of silence, but I think there should be some questions. And the first has been found. Erik, please.
Thank you very much. I'm the panel leader of panel 5, by the way. And thank you very much for the presentations. I think we could not have started the EC summer study better than these presentations. It's really great. And besides being a panel leader in panel 5, I'm also working for United Nations as an international expert on energy management. And that leads me actually to my first comment, because some of the presentation has said that the industry should deliver. And it's like, if you look at an organization, when we are working around the world trying to get an organization to implement energy management, deliver savings, they should deliver. But the first thing that I ask them I would like to see from that company is I would like to see commitment from the top management. Because if the top management is not committed, something is not going to happen down in the organization. And actually, I think it's nice to say that the industry should deliver, or the society should deliver energy savings, but I think I need more commitment from the top management, and that is the policy makers, the Prime Minister, the Energy Minister, the people in Brussels. And I think when they are sitting, when I hear them discussing how high should we go, and they're discussing how to lower it how low can we go, I think that's created frustration in the society, because what is then important? How important is it? So I would like to see more commitment from the top management in the policy makers, the politicians. And then going further on to talk about from my experience from energy management, I think because one of you said it's about technology, and I think technology is very important, but we have to use technology in the way it's intended. And there's a big need to improve knowledge about operational control. What is the right set point of the boiler? Why should it be 8 bar the compressed air systems? And there's a lot of savings, the low-hanging fruits you can gain in this way. Another thing is, you were
Erik,
talking
please, may I interrupt?
Yeah?
Are you going to make some questions or things you want us to respond on, or is this like a little presentation of...
You might say it's a presentation. Yeah, no, it's okay. Just thoughts, because I think it's important to highlight. We don't need, for instance, technology solutions to be energy efficient. We can be it with the things we already have if we use it right.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Erik.
Are there any more reactions from the audience? Aha, good.
Not a reaction, but a
Can you
question.
please briefly introduce yourself?
My name is Anthony Hilliard. I'm from Canada, a PhD student in industrial engineering. Even in Canada, we're adopting the industrial efficiency networks and to try and get better success from our local industries.
Why even?
Well, I'm just joking about Canada is not known necessarily as a leader in energy efficiency.
I'd argue with you about that.
Okay, well, let's talk later. I'm a student, so I get to be critical. In our local networks, we're very careful to have networks of companies that do not compete. So they are not rivals. Is that the case in the Swiss model? And is there any benefit? Where's the benefit between doing the same thing and therefore having the same problems and solutions, and doing the same thing and therefore not wanting to give away any secrets or competitive advantage?
Oh, no, you can take it if you like. Yeah. Because it may raise further discussion, so I think it's if you would like to answer.
But there was a question over there as well, or at least a statement or something.
Ah, but you can respond
yeah.
on that as well.
Yeah.
Because I see it makes Erik very happy.
Okay. Now let's have the first comment was, now he expects more activities, enthusiasm from, let's say, the presidents or the chancellors. I think it's difficult to expect from them much, because they are exposed to huge lobbyism, and they are losers of energy efficiency, and maybe they are more powerful to influence those presidents and chancellors. So I'm not sure whether we first should have more successes and then come with the success stories, so that the lobbyism has not the arguments as they have today. Now, the other question was regarding the networks. In Switzerland, as well as in Germany or whatever, the concept is, at present, that it's a local concept, which means whatever the branches are, doesn't matter. They concentrate on the cross-cutting technologies. And secondly, if there is a company which has the same customer, then they were asked whether they have the same. If they have the same, they are excluded. So it can be only one company with customers at the same branch. So that's how we go about it. However, we also learned that in some cases, the competition goes not by the energy cost. It goes by other things like marketing. An example is the 4 and 5 stars hotels. They do not compete on energy cost. So they are open. So it depends on what branch you're looking at. It's a local concept, and it helps locally. Another possibility is that we introduce the networks in large companies with lots of daughters, so that they have an internal company network, and this is also done now in Germany and as well in Switzerland.
Anyone else who would like to respond? Yeah? Okay.
I think one of the big issues is that in any country, we're all starting to be out-competed by China. And there's a real case for a country, a region, a regional government to actually get all the hotels, all the paper manufacturers, whatever, together to sort of say, for the security and the ongoing economic stability of this region, we need to find ways to cooperate even though you're competing. I ran a network for hotels in the city once, and there were 8 hotels there. They said, we're competing with other cities for hotel guests, and we need to prove that we're greener than others. So there is a lot of common ground there. I think, I have a sense in Europe that industry here doesn't realise how aggressive the competition from other parts of the world is. And I could be completely wrong or misreading this, you know, but I look at China where they've transformed their aluminium smelting sector completely. Something like 6 years. There are no more than 6-year-old smelters left in China. They're gone. They're replaced with the world's best. And they're vertically integrated into the manufacturing process. And what was a high-performing smelter in New Zealand a few years ago is now struggling to compete with that. 2 smelters out of 7 in Australia have shut down because they've been out-competed by China. Energy efficiency at its purest. China isn't mucking around waiting for the rest of the world to see what it does. It is simply replacing old stuff with new stuff. And it's technology and practices because it has a lot of people to feed. And so a region, a country shouldn't get too bogged down in competitive issues. It really should be saying, how do we transform, how do we create?
Okay, questions?
Hi, yes, Rod Jansen from Energy and Demand and the panel leader for Panel 6. I hope people will come to Panel 6. Little marketing. First of all, a comment and then a question. Back in the 1980s, I want to congratulate one of the speakers today, because Eberhard, back when I was at the IEA, you were on the advisory committee of the report. I was the project team leader for a report called Energy Conservation in IEA Countries. And it was the first comprehensive evaluation globally of energy efficiency. And you were on our advisory committee. And so it was a great honor to have you. You were inspiring then and you're inspiring now. Last week we had the Commission come out with its energy security strategy, or communication. I don't know if you want to call it a strategy. It didn't really mention energy efficiency as much as we here would like to have it, but it really didn't mention the industry sector at all, to tell you the truth. And it certainly didn't, the person I'm sitting beside works in cogeneration and all that, and it certainly didn't have anything to do on the supply side. I would like to know how you, the 4 of you, would try to express how we make a more convincing argument to those powers in Brussels, whether it's in the Commission, whether it's in the Parliament, or whether it's in the Council, to sort of raise, in terms of what we can do in terms of an industrial energy efficiency and energy efficiency as a whole, to make a greater impact for, and some call energy security a co-benefit. I don't. I think of it the other way around. But I'd like to just get your views, because I think something that's just happened last week, and I think we've got a much stronger word to say on this.
Who would like to respond on this?
Well, if you look at our presentations today, and I think that my colleagues here on my left, if we keep talking only about energy efficiency as such, as an issue, as in cost avoidance issue, we won't get far. The presentations today showed that investing in energy efficiency has much more benefits, economic benefits. it's economically beneficial to deal with energy efficiency. So I think that underlining that aspect of investing in energy efficiency could, and I say could, get Brussels more active on that subject. At least in the Netherlands, we realize that, although we have this experience with the long-term agreement, we again put it on the top of the bill based on a common understanding between industry, government, NGOs, that energy efficiency as such is interesting but not enough. We have to deal with it more and invest and get the economic benefits of it. And I hope it will work, because it's a question I'm already bothering for many years, dealing with this subject. And I saw your presentation of what we achieved from 1974 up to now on energy efficiency. Well, as it happens, that was my start point of my professional career. It has nothing to do with each other, I think. But it shows that we have done a lot, and we have done a lot also in economic terms. And nevertheless, every couple of years, energy efficiency is low on the agenda. And I'm still looking for the key. But I do know that part of the solution lies in the economic benefits of investing in energy efficiency.
Yeah, I think there are two reasons. One is the traditional energy policy is totally focused on energy supply. Coal, then we had oil, then we had natural gas, then we had nuclear, and now we have renewables. So whenever people discuss in media, in politics, in industry, in the associations, whenever they discuss, they focus on the supply side. And so I have not a real recommendation how to change this, but we have to realize this. Second, energy efficiency is not an instrument where you can make any money on media, where you can get any voter, and where you can get any benefits, except those who go for it. But they are small. So from the media point of view, I don't know what to do, but it's easy. You know, energy efficiency, it's complex, it's not visible, it's not like photovoltaics and wind, it's not medial, it's not understandable. So it's the question, it will be not an easy task to change the two things, the focus on supply and to change media and politicians that they should look after energy efficiency. I can only state this, now I have no solutions.
I think it's very interesting to ask why. Why are we doing energy efficiency? Europe runs the world's second largest integrated energy efficiency program. China runs the largest. The Chinese energy efficiency plan is part of their 5-year planning process. The title of this is the 5-year plan for the social and economic development of the People's Republic of China. It's driven by social and economic development. And energy efficiency is in there in spades. It's there through industry, households, the lot. And the real thing is why. What really motivates a society to do this? It's the social and economic outcomes.
Well, they have it easy. They have a central government.
A small contribution, maybe to get low on the local scale. What motivates citizens in city to energy efficiency? And it's quite difficult because there is no one citizen. It's a big, there are a lot of people. And what drives them is not captured in one or two lines. We see in Arnhem, we have got a big social low-income group. What drives those people to work on energy efficiency? How do we get them to see the benefits, which are my colleagues refer to? And more, I think there are other benefits we have to underline.